You are heartless. Do you know that? Absolutely heartless. That's what he said to me. Not to her. Not about her. About me. I was standing in our bathroom doorway, looking at the fresh tattoo on his forearm. Her name, her face, her dates, still red at the edges from the needle, barely 4 months after she died. And all I did was go quiet. Not even a word, just quiet. And he read my silence like an attack. She's gone. She's gone. And you're standing there making this about yourself? I opened my mouth, closed it. Because what do you say to that? How do you explain that your feelings are not an assault on someone's grief? That existing, that having a reaction, is not the same as being cruel? I didn't have the words that night. I have them now. Let me tell you the whole story. His ex, I'll call her Vanessa, had been out of his life for over a year before we met. He told me about her early on, the way people do when they want to be honest with someone new. They had been together for almost 4 years. She had cheated on him, not once, not a moment of weakness, but repeatedly, over a long stretch of time, with someone he considered a friend. He found out the worst way possible. It broke him, he said. Took him a long time to trust again. I respected that. I held it carefully. We built something real. 8 months in, I had met his family. We talked about the future in that easy, unhurried way that means both people feel safe. He was kind, attentive, the kind of partner who remembers small things, that I hate cilantro, that I always need the window cracked when I sleep, that I get quiet when I'm overwhelmed and need space before I can talk. I thought I knew who I was with. Then Vanessa died. Car accident. Sudden, senseless, the kind of death that lands on everyone in a person's orbit like a shockwave. He got the call on a Tuesday morning, and I held him while he cried, and I did not once, make it about me. I gave him space to grieve. I didn't question it. I didn't time it, because that's what you do when you love someone. The first thing I noticed was the group. His friend group, people who had watched Vanessa destroy him, who had held him through the aftermath, who knew exactly what she had put him through, began to speak about her like she had been rewritten. Every flaw sanded down, every cruelty softened. She was suddenly irreplaceable. A light extinguished too soon. I understood it. Death does that. I didn't say a word. The second thing was how he started talking about her. Not grieving exactly, more like re-examining. Old memories surfacing with new warmth. A softness in his voice when her name came up that I had never heard when she was alive. I told myself, grief is not linear. People revisit. Let him process. The third thing was the appointment. He mentioned it casually, a tattoo, something to honor her memory. I felt something tighten in my chest, but I stayed calm. I said gently that I had feelings about it and asked if we could talk. He said, of course, and then never brought it up again. 2 weeks later, he came home with her face on his arm. I didn't explode. I want you to know that. I saw it, and I went quiet. He watched me clock it, and his jaw set immediately like he had been waiting for my reaction, had already decided what it meant, had already written his defense before I said a single word. Before you say anything, I wasn't going to say anything. Your face is saying something. And that was the beginning of the cruelest argument I've ever been in. Not because he yelled, though he did, but because every sentence was engineered to make me the villain of my own pain. I said I felt like I hadn't been consulted on something permanent that affected our relationship. He said, grief doesn't require a committee. I said I understood he was hurting, but I was struggling too. He said I had no idea what real loss felt like. I said carefully, quietly, that the woman on his arm had cheated on him for years, that I had supported his grief without condition, that I just needed him to see me. He looked at me like I had said something unforgivable. You have some nerve, he said. She is dead. She cannot defend herself, and you're bringing up her mistakes now? What kind of person does that? The kind, I thought, who is trying not to disappear. I slept in the guest room that night. The next morning, he had already told his friends. I know because his best friend texted me, not to ask my side, to tell me I needed to be more sensitive, that grief doesn't have a timeline, that I was making things harder than they needed to be. I stared at that text for a long time. Everyone had an opinion about my reaction. Nobody asked about his. It came to me at 3 in the morning, the way the real questions always do. Not during the argument, not while he was calling me heartless, but alone in the dark, in a room in our apartment that was supposed to be temporary, listening to him sleep down the hall. Did he ever actually get over her? Not Vanessa the person, the real one, the one who had lied to him and broken his trust and left him in pieces, but Vanessa the idea, the what could have been, the alternate timeline where she didn't cheat, where they made it, where he got the version of her he fell in love with. Because grief is strange that way. Sometimes we don't mourn who someone was. We mourn who we needed them to be. And I thought about the last 8 months. The care he showed me, the tenderness, the future talk. All of it real. I believe that. But I also thought about the way his eyes went somewhere else when her name came up. The way he had never once, in all his telling of the story, stopped loving her even as he described what she did to him. I thought, what if I'm not a beginning? What if I'm a bridge? What if he looked at me and saw someone safe to land on while he figured out how to carry a loss he hadn't finished having yet? I got up, went to the kitchen, and sat at the table in the dark for a long time. I thought about what it means to love someone who is still, quietly, somewhere else. I thought about the woman on his arm, permanent, chosen, paid for. And I thought about myself, present, loving, carefully making myself smaller so his grief had more room. And I asked the question I had been avoiding. Is this where I want to be? I didn't leave in anger. I want to be clear about that. I waited until a calm morning, made coffee, sat across from him at the same table where we had talked about the future in that easy, unhurried way, and I told him the truth, that I loved him, that I had meant it, that I did not begrudge him his grief and never had, but that I could not be in a relationship where having feelings made me the villain, where a woman who had hurt him was untouchable in death in a way she never had to be accountable for in life, where the only acceptable version of me was one who asked nothing, felt nothing, and waited quietly at the edge of a morning that had no end in sight. He didn't argue this time. He just looked tired. I don't know what I want right now, he said. I know, I said. That's the problem. I moved out 3 weeks later. Clean, no drama, no screaming in parking lots. His friends probably still think I'm heartless. Let them. Here's what I've learned. You cannot compete with a ghost. Not because the ghost is better than you, but because the ghost is finished. Perfect. Frozen at the moment before all the complication. The living can always disappoint. The dead never can. And some people need to mourn before they can love again. That is not a character flaw. But it is not your job to wait in the hallway while they figure it out, being called heartless every time you knock on the door. You are allowed to have feeling, even inconvenient one, even ones that exist in the same space as someone else's grief. You are not a placeholder. You are not a bridge. You are not a consolation prize for a love that didn't survive. And the moment someone tells you that having feelings makes you the villain, that's your answer. Have you ever loved someone who wasn't fully over someone else? How did you know when it was time to walk away? Drop it in the comments. I read everyone.